Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. All of our attendees, it's really a pleasure to have all of you here and to really share, listen to the sharing and learn together as how we go through what we can do in this sharing of effective conversation for virtual selling. So some of the house rules that we can go through first, just so that we get things into play. So guys, please make sure that you keep your video on at all times, and also please ensure that your microphone is muted at all times as well, so that we get our full attention to all of our speakers. So if you have any other questions that you have, please use the chat box, put in the Q&A session, and we will address all of it by the end of the webinar as well. So today's webinar will be recorded and it will be sent to you within 48 hours via email. And last but not least, this is the main thing. It's for you to listen with an open mind and to really just get in the information to see whether this perspective helps you in terms of closing your sales. So we are still having a lot of attendees coming in. I hear all the whistling and bustling. That's amazing. I want to hear more of it. And guys, thank you so much for joining us again. Welcome to Effective Conversation for Virtual Selling. This is a panel discussion. So we're going through life experiences that our speakers have today. And of course, to share tips on what is it that we can use in terms of closing the sale virtually. And you'll be surprised at how much sale is now closed on a virtual perspective rather than meeting face-to-face, all because of COVID. So some of the key things that my speakers that will be sharing today would be, of course, digital tools, arts of remote selling, and of course, LinkedIn and how LinkedIn can work for you. So if we move on to the next slide. Sorry, yeah, thank you so much. So again, pleasure to meet all of you. My name is Lucian and I'm the moderator for today. It's a pleasure to be here to moderate this with all the speakers and to give you insights. So what I do is I used to be in the tech sector doing crowdfunding, and I've moved on to do employee benefits for clients in terms of providing them more benefits that is valuable beyond healthcare. So today is not about me, it's really about the speakers that are behind the whole network together, and rather this workshop or this panel discussion that we have. So the next speaker that I would love to introduce is Charmaine. Now, Charmaine is one of the organizers of the event today. Charmaine started her journey all the way in 2011, starting her gloves for touchscreen devices all the way back when she was in an exchange program. And in 2014, she saw this vision of starting QuickDesk in terms of providing education and technology in helping businesses and sales professionals drive more sales. And I believe that's why all of you are here today. And the best thing is she is one of the 30 under 30 Forbes winner for 2019. And of course, she is now the 100 top women in tech in 2020 as well. So we have very strong speakers. The next speaker that I would love to introduce to you guys is Nuno. Now, Nuno is the founder of Delingo Management and co-founder of Mactas. So Delingo started way back in 8 years ago, and now he started off this so that he can help businesses drive leads to new companies, and of course to drive more leads for people to close more sales. And on top of that, he has gone all the way in expanding to the Philippines and having his base, of course, he's Portuguese. That's why he's also having presence in Portugal. And not long ago, he started with Mactas as well. It is a B2B marketplace that is looking forward to becoming the next unicorn. And last but not least, we have Felicia. So Felicia is the founder of Business Multiplier, and she's the master licensee of Engage and Grow Singapore. So if you're looking for a business coach, a keynote speaker, and somebody that can help your business to grow, not in terms of just value, in terms of revenue, in terms of your net worth of the company, you want to grow your sales team, she is the person for you. And if you're looking towards her coaching, she has had businesses grow from 100% all the way up to 500% in terms of growth within a period of 12 months. So guys, the lineup of speakers that we have here are amazing. And I really hope that you're going to get so much information that you can use this immediately once we finish the panel discussion. So we'll move on to the next segment right now. Now, this is so interesting because, you know, what is virtual selling? Virtual selling is not even just about talking about business online. We were so used to doing everything face-to-face. And of course, in 2019, we've seen the worst of what a pandemic can do. And it has changed how people view meeting online, meeting offline, and how businesses are done. In fact, just last month, I was reading a stat that's so interesting, and it's from LinkedIn. In short span of 2 years, 55% of your buyers, people that want to buy your services, prefer buying things online. And this is where you are today, learning the skill sets to do it. And the best thing is 76% of them are also investing money into getting digital tools, into making sure that everything is in line with the process of closing the deal from the first time you meet them and the period of finishing it off. And you know what? 36% of the sellers say that they have closed over $500,000 of deals without meeting the person. Isn't that amazing? So today we're going to go through this panel discussion to find out what is it that our three speakers have to share. And of course, the experiences they've gone through in terms of being where they are today and what we can learn from them. So Felicia, Charmaine, and Nuno, welcome.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone.
Fantastic. So thank you so much for joining us today. I believe all of our attendees today are really, really interested in finding out what is it that they can do to really focus on selling virtually. And I really like to start off with an experience that you have in terms of the last 12 months and how is it that things have gone through within the period. So maybe I'd like to ask the first question to Charmaine. What do you think of the buying patterns? How has it changed since the last 12 months for you?
Okay, I mean, can speak from personal experience. So, you know, in the past, because we do system sales, we sell CRM, we sell automation. Before COVID, like when we tell customers, hey, let's do our sales over Zoom, it's like, no, come to my office. But of course, COVID kind of made everybody default work from home. So we all started to do sales on Zoom. And interestingly, the sales team became a lot more productive because we can save traveling time and we are better able to really qualify customer. And we started to learn how to even build relationships over on Zoom platforms. Not only that, our email campaigns have become a lot more effective because people are starting to read more emails than before, I believe, since we are all stuck behind the computer. So I realized that the way we interact with customers have changed. And in buying patterns itself, I guess in the past, people would say that, oh, you know, I want to be digital, but there's interest, but there's always a resistance. Because it's like, yeah, you know, there's no real need to change. Of course, with COVID, it's like, okay, I really need to change because, example, one part of our system includes integrated telephony. We realized a huge rise in demand in people asking for, hey, are you able to do like tracking of inbound calling, integrated outbound calling, so that my sales team or my team can still be working from home. So this, like the way of interaction with buyers have changed. And I realize buyers these days are a lot smarter because when you're Zooming with them, I trust halfway through, they're just like Googling about you, Googling about your solution, Googling about the answer you give. So you can no longer like smoke screen them, you know, and not that we do, but you know, that's no longer a possibility. So because before they come to you, they have already done all the research about you. So
I absolutely agree. Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And you are right. I mean, there's so many things that are changing right now. Everything is just within the fingertips that we have. Today, if I want to find out something about Charmaine, Nuno, or Felicia, all I need to do is just put in the company name and bam, all the information is there. So this really leads me to the next question because there's so much things that we need to do to market ourselves in a digital perspective. And Nuno, I think you are the expert in this. So, Nuno, maybe you can share with us, how is it that digital marketing has changed in the last 12 months? Within this whole aspect as well.
Of course, right? So now people are mandatorily in front of their computer most part of their day, right? Before, when we book a meeting with someone, you will go on their to their office, as Charmaine mentioned. Now everything is online. Now your time is in between. Your calendar is basically your guidance through the day, and you are still seated in a desk. So obviously digital marketing, and in my perspective, LinkedIn itself became like a very, very strong channel for multiple angles. And definitely the amount of information, as you rightfully mentioned, that you can get online, the amount of preparation that you can do before you actually speak with a prospect, and the amount of mapping that you can do on the accounts that you want to approach is critical. And therefore, yeah, people became more aware of where these targets are living in the digital space, and they can obviously target them more effectively as well. So yeah, not only 12, like the last 24 months were definitely exponentially effective for the digital space.
Thank you for your sharing, Nuno. And yes, I think it is the change in terms of how COVID has really accelerated how everybody is going online and going digital. And really, Felicia, because of that, we are so used to doing face-to-face selling, and now people have to convert, or rather, just make the change to do virtual selling. How is it that you've seen the changes in how people sell?
Well, obviously, this is a game where if you want to pivot and you follow where the market moves, you'll really thrive, right? And then if you are losing out, you're missing out on the train, then that's where you get left behind. So I really want to concur with Charmaine and Nuno, because I was a believer of in-person sessions. So I used to conduct a lot of seminars. I love it when I can feel the energy of the crowd, and then the first time I had to do a webinar because of the COVID situation, it was quite painful the first time. However, what I find is that the more I do it, hey, it is really very effective, because right now I don't have to have the venue cost. I don't have to have the logistics part of it. And I can run one whole show with just one team member supporting me. And I can get as much, if not more, results than before. So again, it is now really about people stepping up. If you really want to still thrive, your business still want to grow in this current market, what are some of the upskilling that you need to do? What are some of the upgrading that you need to put in the way you sell? And if you can master it, in fact, like for me personally, as a business coach, I measure my conversion rate constantly. I'm very happy to share that my conversion rate online, in fact, is even better than my past in-person conversion rate. So isn't that interesting?
That is really interesting. I can see how things have changed. And you're right. I think the word that you've said is about pivoting. And if businesses don't do it fast enough, you see a lot of companies slowing down, or if not getting the sales that they want to. And hence that's why we're having this value-added session to help people like this. So I'm just really curious. I mean, there are certain tools that we are looking at in terms of making this happen. So Charmaine, maybe you can share with us what kind of digital tools you think are effective in terms of sales.
Yeah. So I think at the end, there's this one word called like sales funnel, especially in sales. However, sales funnel is thought through from the whole perspective of how do you get your pipeline. So you talk about lead gen. For lead gen, you have different ways, inbound and outbound. So some of the tools you realize that has been very helpful is like example, LinkedIn crawler. So you have tools like Apollo that you can do data crawling from different social sites. If you want to get email or contact details, there are also, of course, extension like Lead IQ that is linked to LinkedIn. Besides that, this is for crawling of data. Inbound methods, one thing that definitely we've been promoting a lot and realizing that there's a real need for is very targeted, focused marketing campaigns. So example, having good landing pages, being able to also have automation to automatically follow up with any new leads generated through a marketing or sales automation tool, as well as to be able to have like the ability, like what Felicia talked about, which is identifying conversion rate. So even after you automate, how does the lead get nurtured and engaged? How are they converting? So these are some of the tools. So typically when people ask me like, oh, is this tool, this CRM something I should take? Is this email marketing I should take? I say, maybe you should ask like, who's your target audience? How are you selling? And based on your target audience and your sales funnel that you design, to decide what tools to use. Because every business is different depending on your target market.
Thank you so much for the input, Charmaine. And talking about tools and really looking at the target audiences, I believe, Nuno, we have looked at LinkedIn as one of the key places to get our leads. And of course, best ways to do it is to find a message or drafting something that is so good that they want to say, hey, I want to connect with you. So maybe you can share with us, how is it that you do it in terms of your expertise through the lingo?
Yeah, and it's a step behind that, before that, right? So obviously the message is key, but what's important is that you eventually map very well your target audience, right? So different companies have different target audiences, have different set of stakeholders that they need to engage. So by looking not only at LinkedIn, but doing kind of a cross-check Google and LinkedIn and looking at their websites and making sure that you understand what are the departments that have more people in each country for and region, for these accounts allows you to have a better sense of what are the needs of that specific company and where are the stakeholders that can actually make decisions. And obviously LinkedIn is a massive database of executives that you can definitely use to identify who will be more related to your message. Then obviously putting the right message across to them is crucial, right? So is LinkedIn perhaps the best channel to do so? Really depends on the industry. We have clients where LinkedIn works very well. We have clients that obviously they need to identify their target audience through LinkedIn, but then engaging them is much more effective via email or via other sort of channels. We know that LinkedIn is also very is full of players that try to obviously reach out to their target audience through there, because it's somehow free at the point that if they are in their network. So becomes very crowded, the amount of messages that you receive every day. So there you also have a lot of information about your targets that allow you to actually customize your message or making sure that your message is actually well received. So the more you know about your target audience, the more that you know what they are needing, what they are posting, what their company's vision is, what the CEO's vision is for the company, the better you can actually position your solution to the right people in the organization. So yeah, message is obviously critical, but if you send a very nice message to the wrong audience, yeah, it's a waste of time. Did I answer your question?
You most definitely did. Thank you so much, Nuno. And yeah, I guess you're right. In terms of engaging people, like once you get the message across and you've got connected with the person, we really want to know how we can build trust with this person to engage this lead. And Felicia, being a business coach yourself, I believe you have experiences in helping people, or rather sales team, to experience that portion. So maybe you can share with us, how is it that we build trust with such contacts?
Yeah, sure. So there is this thing called the trust formula. Have you heard of it, Lucian?
No, that is really interesting.
Okay.
Please share.
So interesting. So there's this trust formula. I came across it, and then what happened was I backtracked. So I reflected upon all my experiences, all the training, all the coaching that I've given people, especially when it comes to training them how to sell online. And the thing is, a lot of the times people do have their limiting belief. Like one of my clients who's in the renovation industry, he was telling me at the beginning of the circuit breaker, we're gonna die. The next 2 months, we're gonna die. Because interior design, how do you sell online? It's not possible. However, I'm like, no, you can sit there and wait to die, or you can do something about it. So we were really playing around with the different models, different ways of communicating to make sure that even though it is online, you still can build just as much trust. And after that, I came across this formula that was very interesting, which is the trust formula. They say that the trustworthiness, whether online or offline, but online especially, you have to take note of, it has a few factors. CRI over S. So C stands for credibility. Now, the credibility that we talk about here when it comes to online selling obviously has something to do that Charmaine and Nuno mentioned. You have to make sure that your storefront, your online storefront, your website, your LinkedIn profile is updated, and you are putting out all the value proposition that you can offer. You have to mention your track record. How have you delivered in the past? So right now, credibility is a different ballgame, because just knowing that you have all these credentials is not enough. You have to put it out there and make sure that it is visible online. And they say that if you're not visible online, you're not visible anywhere nowadays, post-pandemic. The second part after C, the CRI over S, right? So R stands for reliability. Once you have started establishing that contact, do you always do what you say? There are people who came to me and messaged me, and Nuno was right. I receive so many LinkedIn connection messages almost every day. And every time they will say this and that, but there are some people who say, oh, I'm going to do this, and then they don't. Whereas there are some people, like, in fact, we met on LinkedIn, right, Nuno? So I first met Nuno on LinkedIn. And when he said, I'm going to connect you with these people and these people, he does it. And he does it very promptly. And I instantly feel like I can trust him. That is just an example. The reliability. Do you always do what you say? Or do you always just talk and then there's no follow-up? The other thing, the I, CRI, is intimacy. Even though it is an online Zoom meeting, and a lot of the time there's that slight awkwardness, right? The first time you meet someone on Zoom for the very first time, how do I feel about this person? How can you make the other person feel safe? How do you build that common ground? How do you build that instant rapport? How do you make them feel like, hey, I'm really here, I'm so totally harmless? How do you set the agenda of the conversation where they feel that they can be themselves and they can be open to connect? And some people do this better than others, but it is a skill that can be learned. So I want to encourage you. There are some people who tell me, but Fel, I'm an introvert. Wow, then that becomes the number one excuse. Because I'm an introvert, I can't build intimacy online. That is not true. There are techniques that you can learn, there are skills that you can train, and the more you do it and the more comfortable you are doing it, the better it will be. Now, if you think about it, CRI. So what is this S? If you picture the formula as C, credibility plus reliability plus intimacy, divided by self-orientation, how self-serving you are. When people feel that at the end of the day, you're out to get them, you're out to push something, you're out to push your agenda, even if you're very credible and you have been reliable and you're super good in warming them up, if they feel that you are very self-serving, suddenly the trust score drops. So I have a very concrete example. I was introduced to somebody the other day for a potential collaboration. And I am there out in the open saying, yes, I would love to connect, because when I checked his credibility online, it's perfect. His product sounds very, very credible, and it's a very good fit with what I'm offering. When he said, okay, I'm gonna meet you on this date and time, blah, 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 great. So he sets the Zoom link for me. So I'm like, oh, this guy is pretty cool, right? And when we first break the ice for the first 5 minutes, yeah, I can see why he is a nice person. However, the conversation continued with him pushing presentation. Like he has to finish every single slide for the next 45 minutes. And that left me to say what I'm doing for 5 to 10 minutes, which I'm fine. That is more than enough for me to help them understand. However, the last 5 minutes, he is back to pushing why he is so good, why his product is so good. And then I left the conversation feeling like, I'm not sure if I want to work with this person. I don't know whether you encountered this before, anybody in the audience. But so this is the trust formula. A lot of people focus a lot on the building credibility, reliability, intimacy. At the end of the day, people want to know that you truly want to add value to them instead of pushing your own agenda. So that's how self-orientation, the part that a lot of people miss, can make or break a deal. So that, Lucian, is how you build a trust.
Thank you so much for your sharing, Felicia. And I think I can resonate with that as well, because I have seen people coming in doing that. And you know that the vibe is very different. Like you can build that rapport, have it all the way, and then suddenly, something feels odd. And you know, okay, maybe I should take a step back and see if this is something that I want to do together with this person. So thank you so much for sharing this with us. And really, I mean, now that we've gone through the process of getting all the leads and the people are ready to buy from you, and you have so many customers that are there waiting to be closed, I believe there's something that we can do in terms of tools that can help to manage this. And Charmaine, just really like to ask you a question, like how can automation help in closing such sales when, you know, I'm the only one, or I'm having a sales team that needs to manage all of this together?
Yeah, so the one thing, I mean, a bit of sharing. So QuickDesk, we started out as a telemarketing system in 2014. And that was the point in time when telemarketing still works. However, in 2015, we started to see a drop in the telemarketing volume. So we realized that, hey, you know, it might not be as effective as it used to be anymore. And then we moved into the space of CRM. In the past 3 years, we converted to automation because we realized what businesses or sales professionals are looking for is not a system to track data. Of course, the bosses want, right? But what the sales professionals and marketing professionals want is a system that do work for them. I know it sounds a bit like what systems will do work for them. But interestingly, a lot of product managers who like myself, you know, who don't come from an engineering background, but from a sales and business background, we want systems that work for us so that we can spend our time doing more meaningful conversation, having more meaningful conversations, and really do the things that matter for businesses. So some of the key tricks that we realized, B2B and B2C a bit different. So let me talk a bit about B2C. Chatbots have been growing, and I'm not sure if everybody knows there's something called WhatsApp Business API, which has allowed for WhatsApp chatbots. And the good news is, like 2 months ago, WhatsApp Business API have allowed for WhatsApp marketing. Before that, you are not allowed to use WhatsApp Business API for marketing. You can only use it for user or customer engagement. These have definitely changed the ball game in how we can do marketing. in our most commonly Singapore used platform called the WhatsApp. Right. So that's one trend I've seen. The second trend that we have seen is that now in marketing and sales are now hybridized. Not only are automations built for marketing, they are also built for sales. Example, like our clients have certain buying behaviors and cycles. Like certain quarters of the year they buy, especially, you know, when the book ends, when the budget reopen itself. And once you identify those patterns, you are able to tag a contact in a marketing automation like what we have in QuickDesk Marketing, so that you can automate a follow-up to the person. So sometimes you think that, oh, the person has really follow up with me very promptly, huh? But actually, we speak a while later, you realize that, oh, they actually automated the follow-up. But the good thing is they caught your attention. So email automation really helps to be able to do automated follow-up based on when is their next potential buying cycle. So that's for B2B. So B2C, a lot more chats. B2B, I think still a lot of use of email that you can do for automation. And automation help with three things. One is identifying further about who this customer is and following up with the customer when they want to be follow up. So we stop ending up looking like a spammy contact.
Thank you so much for your sharing, Charmaine. That was really, really insightful. And yeah, I guess because a lot of times we are always in a certain email chain, but it's also the information that is important for us to make an action point in terms of what to do for the next cycle of the sale. And thinking about that, Nuno, I've noticed that you have over 14,000 followers on LinkedIn. And this tells me that you are a thought leader of a certain aspect. And we really have to love to share or rather learn from you. How is it that you got to that stage? And how is it that you managed to get high C-suite people to come on board? And what is the messaging that you're giving to these people if I want to connect, or rather the attendees want to connect with such contacts?
Yeah, I don't want to obviously trick the audience to say that I'm a thought leader. I obviously been in sales for a big chunk of my life, and being LinkedIn my reference platform. Obviously, through a few years adding people that are relevant to your business, you ended up with such number of followers. Now, but you put a very good point, right? We need to be somehow. We need to adequate the messages that we put out there, especially in a platform like LinkedIn, tailored to our audience. And there has to be a very, very strong balance between what you want to promote about what you're selling, what is your services in general, but also being yourself, because in the end of the day, it's still a social platform. And if you are seen as someone that does research on the industries that you operate, or does research on the country that you operate, or in the different dynamics that you are part of. For instance, I like to talk about startups. I like to talk about outsourcing, which is part of the sister company that I also co-founded. I like to talk about obviously all sorts of stuff. And sometimes by being a regular posting on a regular basis, making sure that your mind gets exercised by reading articles and by sharing that with your network, you obviously get more exposure. Obviously, yourself and your businesses get more exposure. But in the end of the day, the ultimate goal is that your audience, if you have 14,000, maybe just a few of them see my posts, but if you have such a large audience, you should put something out there that you find it useful for them to read, that you find it informative, and then obviously they can interact with you. I'll give you a very interesting story, right? So there was this time I posted about bubble tea. I read about an article about a couple that made billions selling bubble tea, and curiously enough, my wife, every time that we go to Portugal, doesn't like that there's not much bubble tea options. So I wrote something along those lines, and obviously the post went viral. A lot of people obviously commenting, people that are Portuguese, people that are local. Everyone loved the kind of the correlation. I ended up even signing an NDA with an entrepreneur that is also married with a Singaporean wife, but lives in Spain, and he's actually opening a bubble tea chain of like a chain of bubble tea in Spain. And he actually asked me, look, when you are ready, and if you want to actually open this in Portugal, we have the right story. So let's go together. So this just to say that sometimes by posting about what your heart is telling you, you get more exposure to your business, because then my page gets much more followers. People start asking me about my businesses. So sometimes by being posting interesting stuff on a regular basis on a platform like LinkedIn helps you get that exposure and helps you get that trust in the end of the day from your followers.
Thank you so much for your sharing. That was really informative. And really like to find out as well, because, sometimes I've been sending, and I believe attendees, you can resonate with me. We've been sending so many invites to people and, we don't get replies. What is the best way that we can find out? Like, how is it that our messages have failed? Is there something that we can do about it?
This was to me as well, right?
Yes, this is for you, Nuno.
Yeah, so it's all about, again, the understanding and doing your due diligence to your target audience, right? There's like, again, an avenue of like a notion of messages that float your inbox. So you always have to put something that is a relevant topic to your audience, right? So I have meetings with the strategic head of Semcorp, with the head of Temasek, with really high profile people in really big organizations, because I knew what they were looking at that specific moment. I knew that they were interested in specific topics, and I obviously was part of that offering, and actually engage with them, saying, look, I know that you're looking at ABC. Let's have a chat, because I can do something about it. So it's all about understanding your target audience, understanding that specific profile or a specific person has that set of needs, and then you convey that, being obviously, as it was shared here, being trusted, making sure that you build that confidence, and making sure that your profile is trusted, that you have eventually the credentials that they need, that if they go do research on you, they find you the trusted person, and then from there, obviously, it's the chances of getting a conversation are much higher. Obviously, one thing is that try to always be as genuine as possible, as personal as possible, because yeah, even though sometimes you need to do this on an automated fashion and eventually replicate a message to many people, you do that in a way that they perceive that you are genuinely trying to have a conversation with them, without that immediate intent of selling, right? What people likes the most is that you are willing to obviously learn about their business, understand potential areas of collaboration, but in the end of the day, if you ended up having a commercial agreement or a business relationship, better. But what they appreciate is that you are there, keen to learn about themselves, keen to share what you do, and business is just an add-on or a plus.
Thank you so much for the sharing, Nuno. And attendees, if you have questions for our speakers, please feel free to leave it into the comments. We will be more than happy to answer questions as well at the end of the webinar as well. Oh, I see. I'm so sorry about that, Tim. Is it for all of us or some of the speakers? Do let us know. So I'd like to move on to another question that I would like to ask Felicia. Now, we've looked at ways that we want to grow our sales team. And of course, in terms of selling online, it takes a certain skill set to do so. And in terms of also converting, how are the tips, or rather, what are the tips that you have to help businesses that want to grow their sales team in that aspect of converting sales?
Okay, so I see two parts of the question. Number one is really about how do you then build the right sales team? So my formula in the building the right sales team is always the 3 C's. I like to do acronyms in case you don't realize it. The 3 C's, and the 3 C's are the candidate. You need to get the right people. There are a few qualities that I look out for in salespeople. Now, they have to have that drive, that hunger. It doesn't apply to all the kinds of job description, but for salespeople, if they don't have a strong reason to succeed, I find that is also going to affect the outcome. I also like people who have quite aligned values with me when I hire for myself, or let's say if I help a client hire a salesperson, I always see what is the company values, and I try to fit that value as well. The second C revolves around the competency. So obviously this talks about the skills, which is related to your second part of the question, what kind of skill sets? So I will save this for a bit later. The third part is in fact the culture, that it is not enough that the person knows how to do the job and have the skill set. I always look out for a team culture where there's a bit of a collaborative competition. You want them to be a bit competitive because eventually it's a sales job, but you don't want them to be competitive to the extent where they will kill each other, because then it will be counterproductive, and then all this effort that you spend to find the right people will go down the drain. So I like to form this collaborative competition, and I always feel that you have to work on their engagement level. That's why I am representing that employee engagement sphere. You have to work on their engagement level. It is not enough to just train skill set, because eventually you can give them the best training in the world, but if they are not motivated to do their best, it will not arrive at the end goal. So now I come back to the competency, because your question, it revolves around what kind of approach, how do I sell to get that good conversion rate? So in the past, again, I'm talking about trends. In the past, a lot of the sales academy, sales training focuses a lot on great presentations and very powerful closing techniques and all those things. Obviously, post-pandemic, remember my trust formula, that may not be the best approach. So I'm seeing a lot of shift where a lot of people try to be a bit more consultative. So they move from the product pushing. So in the past, it's very product pushing. And until today, you'll be surprised, there are a lot of very experienced salespeople that have been selling for a long time. They are still doing that product pushing approach. I guess, the longer it is in your DNA, the harder to shake it off. But I see a big shift for people moving towards this, what we call the problem solving or the solution providing kind of approach, where the first thing that they do, oh, someone says that the audio with me is on and off. Is this again to everyone? Like Lucian, can you hear me okay?
Not really.
You are actually very clear to me.
Oh, you're very, okay. All right. So, okay. So I'll be so sad if I spoke so long and then it's like that to everyone. Okay. So that again, going back to what I was mentioning, the second one is the solution provider kind of approach, where they start with the building trust first. And again, because in online selling, you don't really get to meet the person. It is very important that you spend a bit more effort in building that trust. I'm going to try to speak slightly slower for everyone so that in case the internet doesn't keep up, it's a bit clearer. So yes, focus a lot on the building trust. And the other thing is the question, the asking the questions part. So a lot of people feel that what closes the deal is the presentation, but to me, it's in fact the asking questions part. If you do it well, and you can really dig very deep to the point where you hit an emotional point of view, then it is more likely that the person will take action. So if you have done the trust building and the digging deeper with your quality questions correctly, in fact, the presentation, the closing should come quite naturally. There's a third approach, Lucian, that I find recently has been very effective, especially for me and quite a lot of my clients, which is the challenger approach. Sometimes we go all the way from being product pushing to, oh, I have to add value, I consult. But some people fall into the trap of consulting too much. They become giving a little bit too much value to the point where the other person says, oh, thank you very much, I don't need you anymore. So now there's this approach that I call the challenger approach, where you challenge them. Is this the furthest that you want to aim for? Or is there a greater heights that you want to reach? And if you really want to push yourself to be faster, to reach a higher aim, then do you need an accelerator? And if you can add value and become that accelerator, people take a bit of action. So it is a slightly less friendly approach, but there's a fine line between giving way too much value and in the end, the person doesn't take action, and challenging them to really take action and see the outcome that they want for themselves. So I hope that gives you a bit of the shift, right? From product pushing, shift to problem solving. Some people go overboard. So now there's and statistically, we have measured this again, the challenger approach seems to work best at this point.
Thank you so much for your sharing, Felicia. I mean, even me being a moderator, I'm learning so much just from the value that all of you are giving. And I can see some pointers that I can utilize as well. So, thinking about that, because I believe sales teams are people of all different ages as well. And I guess, sometimes technology moves so quickly. We have people that are of certain generation that may not be as swift in learning this. So Charmaine, just wanted to ask you, because you have clients like PropNext and you have a lot of agents in there and they want to find out how to use this software that you have, this CRM system. How is it that you can make it easy? Like if I have a company that has a lot of older generation, is this something that can pick up easily?
Yeah, good question. So actually, if you notice, our slogan in QuickDesk is called "Sell Simple, Sell Smart." Simply because we realized that because we started in the property agency market, we realized that we need to build a product that is first easy to use. Like it's something super very, very important. So when we build our product, we actually build it like an Excel spreadsheet and a name card. Because I always ask the question, if they do not have a CRM today, what would they be using? So the resistance to change has to be reduced to the lowest. So I would just ask, like a sales agent, like, hey, if you're not using like CRM now, what you're using? More often than not, they will say Excel spreadsheet or paper and pen. So simply because of that, we'll guide them through like how can they use the system, and then we will have account management team to handhold them. We'll give them proper product training, and not only product training, we actually do a product training that is tagged to the art of selling. Because we realized that it's very important to blend that in. And that's how I also got to know Felicia, because I think she's really good in the arts part of selling. Like how do you identify emotions and how do you log it into a system to help you in the journey of selling. So the most important thing I realized before buying any system, I'm not sure if there's any business owners here or business leaders, the best way to know that the system will work is first ask the salesperson or marketing person, hey, is this the software you use? Because the challenge is when the leaders decide on behalf of the people, then it might become quite elephant. So we always tell them, hi, you don't have to buy now. Tell our team to come on board. We do a trial, we do a demo. If they're convinced, then you guys can talk about buying. So that is something that is very important. So first remove the potential fear and resistance to change. Second, is to be able to guide them through the journey by putting in the sales, the art of selling into the system. And third, most important thing is actually there's this thing called social proofing. So when we do training also, so we do training for career conversion program. So our like most senior student is like 65. I still remember the first day she came for our class. She's like, what is this Google Drive? Why you all going to use Google Drive? Like we cannot use Google Drive. And then I was like, how do you attend my class? But I said like, hey, you know what? You journey with us, you'll be all fine. And now she's our strongest advocate for digital sales. And that conversion only happened because she tried. So the first thing we need to do is to let them try. And when the other new students came on board, like before they took our course, they said, hey, like, I'm really scared, I haven't been like I don't even use laptops like yours, like a MacBook, I hardly use like Chrome or whatsoever. I said, if this person can do it, so can you. So showing them that others could do it too. So like, why should we fear the system? So I guess that's something that the 3 key things that we use to really help our the more senior salespeople to be able to adapt to the new way of selling.
Thank you so much for that, Charmaine. You just reminded me about me, trying to get my parents to use mobile phones, touchscreens, and the next thing you know, they are probably the most advanced right now. They know every single feature on your phone, and I can see how this is also something that people will go through when they use CRM systems like yourself as well. And so now let's talk about bots, because we've been so used to people on the customer service line talking about, hey, I want to get something fixed and all that, and someone is so nice, but now we're listening to an automated system. So Charmaine, how does this affect us? And do people still prefer human interactions than bots?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Yeah, because one thing that we do is WhatsApp chatbot, and people always say, I don't want to talk to robot, I want to talk to humans. So there's a few things that has happened in the chatbot industry. First thing, a lot of chatbot now sounds like human, even voice bots. So I still remember there was once I received a phone call, and then the person's like, oh, Charmaine, I saw your profile on LinkedIn, and I think your profile is really great. Would you like to join us? We are very good, like headhunting me. It's super funny. But for the next 5 minutes, I never knew it was a bot because she sounded so real. It was only later on when she kept asking me the same question without tweaking her answer that I realized, okay, she's a bot. But one thing that has been very interesting was how to make bots work for you is when you know how to transit from bot to human. So there's this thing called human handover. So there is certain sensitivity that we need to identify. Like example, initially I was quite intrigued by her trying to headhunt me, but the next point was like, hey, I need to talk to, I need to know who you are while you are headhunting me. And she doesn't know how to answer that question. And that's when I know it's a bot, right? So being able to identify which part you need to start handing over to an agent. However, the blessing we have is that with machine learning, with natural language processing, bots are starting to be able to machine learn the interaction and how people are communicating. That would help, like example, certain nuances, right? Like I want to buy something, I want to purchase something. They actually mean the same thing. And how would a bot be able to identify that to trigger that interest? So I would say that bots are very good for the very commonly asked questions and to provide relevant and good enough information to lead a sale. But it should not be used to replace humans in areas where they need a consultative approach. Like what Felicia said, right? At the end of the day, we cannot be pushing a product. We need to first identify the needs and provide a solution for them. So do people prefer internet? Of course they do, but for the simpler questions, a lot of humans are all okay bots. We talk to bots every day. Like go to live chat, ask Jamie, go to our government website, ask Jamie, right? We talk to bots every day. It has already become part of life. Yeah, so I guess it's really about striking a right balance on it.
Thank you so much for the input. And also, I mean, LinkedIn is something that we use to really find out more about how we can connect. And sometimes we get certain things called LinkedIn bot as well. And Nuno, what are your comments on this LinkedIn bot and how do we prevent this from happening to us?
Yeah, I highly discourage that, right? So even in my strategies, every message that I plan with my teams and that I plan for my clients, if they indeed use the LinkedIn channel, everything must be done manually, right? So obviously LinkedIn has their own solution that allows you to obviously message your target audience paying for it. But it's very critical that first you get that human to do it because of exactly what Charmaine was sharing, right? Because that needs to be that human interaction. A lot of times you get a reply that requires you to obviously explain a little bit further about what's going on. But in the end of the day, as I mentioned, right? So you have to adequate your message to your audience, even though sometimes you will use the same or a very similar message to a large pool of audiences, but you also should tweak it based on, again, the profile. If you are again approaching someone from a specific industry versus someone from a different industries, totally different, right? And even email wise. So I did a lot of projects where it's account based approach because we are tapping into big organizations and different areas of the organization that could work with the companies that I was representing, and then you obviously have to customize a message that resonates maybe with the strategy team, that resonates with the R&D team, that resonates with the marketing, with the sales, etc. But again, also a message that includes relevant topics and relevant case studies and relevant examples of how you have been working with that specific organization or with that specific industry, right? And yeah, it's very important. This customization is very important. Again, coming back to what I shared before, to do that really due diligence, map the accounts, learn what is the structure of a company, so you can obviously be more effective, as effective as possible.
Thank you so much, Nuno. And yeah, because now we're all about selling virtually, and we want to find what is the best channel for us to use with LinkedIn Live versus Facebook Live. If I was a salesperson, what should I choose, and why should I choose that?
Depends on it always will depend, right? Depends on your business, depends on your audience. If your audience is mostly and depends on the country most of the times, right? There are countries that use a specific channel more than others. For instance, when we're talking about, and these are like two examples that I come across very often. When we talk about the Philippines, it's very easy for you to engage people on Facebook. But for instance, in Singapore, not so much. Myself, I go to Facebook once a day or once every 2 days. So it really depends on where your audience is more responsive, and eventually even your industry itself, right? So there's a lot of clients that I have that going through LinkedIn is the most effective channel. Going through Facebook might not be effective at all. Going through email is also not so much effective because people that they are engaging with are very young, very social, and they are lacking that interaction over LinkedIn. But there are other people that are on more mature industry, that are more senior, that don't go to LinkedIn that often, or they are not so digitally exposed. So email is always the best approach, and sometimes even email you have to obviously do some follow-ups and some tricks to get them to notice you. So it really depends. It's not a straightforward answer. Sometimes a combination of a couple of channels is the most effective. Like you drop an email to someone, but then connect with them on LinkedIn and say, hey, I just dropped you an email, looking forward to your reply, something like that. But it's always a combination on what is the best channel. Sometimes you have to try do a little bit of an A/B testing on what are the channels that work better for this client or for this industry or for these specific profiles. And then from there, focus on the channel that gives you the most, or focus more attention or put more efforts in the channels that gives you more returns.
Thank you so much, Nuno. And yeah, I think you're right, because I've been looking at, people selling things on Instagram, TikTok, and you have so many young millionaires and billionaires just coming up from it. I guess it's really finding the right channel where your target audiences are really from as well.
Can I add a little bit of things to this topic, Lucian? Because something came up to my mind. I feel the biggest takeaway for me in the last couple of years, especially, is that you have to test and measure. Because there are a lot of thoughts in the market. As I was told last time when I first started out as a business coach, as a business coach, all your crowd is in LinkedIn. However, when I did try to be active on multiple platforms at the same time, I had the most engagement on Instagram. So somehow you have to see what your brand is as well. You have to see who you appeal to, what kind of strengths that you possess. And then you usually appeal to a certain target market. And then if that target market happens to be on Instagram instead of on LinkedIn or vice versa, then that's the kind of channel that you want to spend a little bit more effort. I do feel that recently with the post-pandemic, a lot of people are inundated because there's so many marketing messages everywhere. The attention span also drops. And because of that, now they need to see you multiple times for them to be able to get over that path of resistance. So last time, maybe when they see you a couple of times, it's enough, but now they have to really see you many times before they can take action. I mean, the other panelists probably can chip in as well. But for me, the thing is you have to understand what kind of crowd you appeal to and see where they are. But the biggest thing is have to test and measure. So don't just assume based on an article, based on some thought leader saying this and that. At the end of the day, you have to check for your kind of crowd, your audience, which tool is the most useful for you.
Maybe I'll just add on that. Like, I definitely agree, like different target market, different tools. Another trend we realize is that people are starting to use multiple channels to engage. So there is this one thing that said like, a lot of consumers only make a purchase after you interact with a brand 7 times. Yeah. So we realized that what really drives a sale is a blend of, maybe example, LinkedIn. I saw your brand on LinkedIn before. After that, I saw your Facebook ad, and then I see your email. Wow, this brand seems to be quite credible, huh? The next time you drop them on WhatsApp, hey, by the way, we have this offer. Somehow they just buy it, and that's the reason, I think a lot of us probably familiar, like circle DNA, right? Like almost all my friends use circle DNA, right? Like last time nobody talks about this DNA thing, but it's simply because their brand is always so out there in your face. So when you receive a call, it already shows like it's trusted and credible. So I think having multiple touch points is also very important.
Thank you for the sharing, Felicia and Charmy. I think that's really insightful. I mean, I guess this is why so many channels are utilized to sell very specific products. And sometimes it really creates that whole streamline of branding for everything that you are doing together. And I think one of the focus that I'd like to ask Felicia is selling on Zoom. What is it as effective as selling face to face?
For me, like I shared earlier in the beginning, for sure. And like I said, I think I was telling you halfway about this client of mine who is in the renovation industry, who believes that he cannot close deals online over Zoom because, you know, renovation trade, you need to have the showmanship, site visit, and all these things. We tested and measured as well. And in the beginning of the circuit breaker, he was saying, you know what, that's it, we're gonna fail. At the end of the circuit breaker, he reported that he got a 40% growth in quarterly sales compared to the year before without COVID. And this is comparing previous year 2019 to 2020 with circuit breaker purely selling online. So I do feel that you can be just as effective, if not more effective online. I think one of the key thing is also, you know how when you're blind, your other senses get sharpened. So when you are meeting face to face, you have to be a lot sharper in really looking out for certain cues. So one thing that I always believe is when you are selling to different kinds of prospects, you have to be able to do a little bit of quick profiling. Like I teach this all the time. I think, Lucian, you have been through one of my workshops on this one. You have to be a lot more sensitive. Do a quick profiling in your mind. What kind of client profile is this in terms of their style of communication? There are people who are very to the point, who prefer to receive that communication to the point. When you talk in bullet points, they are happy. When you keep meetings below 10 minutes, they are happy. There are people who need you to be a bit warmer, to ask about their friends, their dogs, their family. And then after that, they will feel like they can trust you. There are people who is just a bit warmer, a bit slower to warm up. But if you show a lot of sincerity, you show that you have intentions to help, then they can trust you. There are also people who need a lot of information, a lot of data. When you show a lot of proof, testimonials, statistics, then they feel they can make decisions. So the whole idea about selling online, you have to be a lot more sensitive of the kind of people that you are facing, and you want to be able to master this art of adapting to blend your own communication style. So when I talk to someone who is very goal driven, they want to keep things quick, I will sound different from when I want to sell to somebody who just wants to know that I have their best interests at heart. And I'll sound different again when I'm selling to someone where I have to be very objective, systematic, data driven, all these things. So again, like I say, when one census is down, the other census have to pick up. It is the same when selling online. You want to communicate with the other person the way they would prefer to receive that communication instead of the way you prefer to deliver. And the other thing that I find is very, very crucial is to remove all sort of limiting belief. If you go on your online sales appointment already thinking that I'm not going to be as effective, this is going to fail, I won't be able to close, you know what? It's going to be true. I always feel whatever you believe, your brain is very smart. You'll find ways to get there. When your brain already sets the intention that, you know what, I believe that I can do this because I've learned the formula, I know the steps, I know that I just have to follow the steps, I'll get the outcome. It will also, the brain will also find ways to get the same outcome. So remove all the limiting belief that selling online is difficult, I can only close deals face to face. I have had cases where sales leaders came to me because, well, I have a team member who refused to do any Zoom appointments. Well, guess how the person performs in sales this last 2 years? And yeah, so again, it is about working harder on yourself as well than you do on the job, right? So the more you can grow in all these areas, the easier for you it will be.
Thank you so much, Felicia. Yes, I believe that's the interesting cause of the DISC. And I think that's a really, really good way to really identify your target audiences, be it if it's online, offline, the aspect of the person and how the person behaves will always be the same. Yeah. And now a lot of them says that they've gone on to online conferences, and that's exactly what the trend is showing right now. Is there anything that we would like to share for Felicia in terms of, are there any extra things they need to do to make sure that they can close this sale?
I think there is a need also to relook at your pitch, like the way you have been pitching, and to adjust it a little bit more, like I said, and to test and measure the effectiveness of the questions. Like I said earlier on, in fact, a lot of the time, the questions that you ask make or break the presentation. If you do the first part correctly, and you can really dig really deep to the point where it hits emotional place, it is in fact going to be a lot easier at a later stage. So I think you need to look at, again, your whole sales process. Some part of it happens before the meeting, and that is Nuno and Shamin's expertise, right? So how do you nurture to the point where when the meeting happens, there's already some level of trust built. My portion is always usually during the actual meeting, how the whole meeting will flow. And I'm a believer in testing and measuring, like I said. So we usually craft an initial flow, and we craft the questions that people can ask. We teach people how to ask questions without sounding like interrogation. By the way, a Singaporeans problem. A lot of people, when they are salespeople, they want to ask questions. My boss tells me I have to ask a lot of questions. They really sound like they're interrogating the person. That is also the quickest way to kill the trust. You don't want to do that. And then by the time they know the dissatisfaction, the vision of the person, then how do you communicate, like I said, according to the person's profile, and eventually be able to arrive at the outcome using that push from the challenger kind of style. Yeah, but again, I think this is a good time to do a bit of reflection. And if you have not started measuring, please do. You cannot lose weight if you don't weigh yourself. That's the easiest analogy that I can share. So if you have not been measuring your conversion rate, please do it. As long as it is just in your mind, it is in your mind. It doesn't count. So that's from me, Lucian.
Thank you so much for the sharing. Okay, so we'll move on to the second question. So what is your current conversion rate? So you've shared a little bit, of course, in terms of expertise. And Shamin, let's talk about the technology part of things. How does the system help in terms of tracking this?
Yeah, definitely. I think I was laughing at Felicia, can't lose it without measuring on the weighing scale. But sometimes people are scared standing on the weighing scale, you know, because they're scared to see the numbers on the weighing scale, right? Yeah, it's like, should I stand on it? Should I not? So what we do is that we actually have a dashboard integrated inside, whereby it just shows like, oh, you know, how does the pipeline look like, how you're converting, and give you some hope as to like maybe you add a forecast date as to when you can potentially convert. So it has a ready built dashboard showing about how all the way from marketing, like in our QuickDesk marketing system, we can show all the way from marketing, like how is this person interacting, engaging, and then how does it convert into an appointment, how did an appointment converted into an actual sales, and how long do you take to close a deal. And these data are very important because when you are predicting, like projecting for next year, you can use this data to like project and plan for next year.
Thank you so much, Shamin. I think that's a really good way to track your sales on a year-to-year basis too. So last question. Okay, so what is the biggest challenge in doing sales virtually? Nuno, this is purely for you. You are the expert in generating leads. How can we help our audiences today?
Yeah, and it's all about what I explained before, right? And sometimes we know that leaders in an organization, CXO level or higher level executives, they don't have the luxury of time to actually go and do the research that they need to do and to approach effectively, or again, it takes time, right? But in the end of the day, it's all about understanding the audience and mapping out that audience within the organizations, within the industries, etc. What happens more often than not, and we work a lot with C-suite executives and general managers and company owners, is that they don't have the time to actually do the research at the scale that they need, because we're talking about hundreds of people every week, right? So we somehow augment them that power, right? And obviously have a sit down with them, understand what's their target audience, who are the key stakeholders that they need to engage, and then put them across lists of people that we research, that we identify. They validated it, and then we work together into an engagement exercise that makes sense for their industry, that makes sense for them, a little bit augmenting their power to do it without really passing the image that they are doing it through a third party. So everything is done, for instance, through an email with their name and through their LinkedIn profile sometimes. But in the end of the day, I think that is important to note that in certain companies, the CEO or the leaders of the companies are the ones that could very well have the most traction when it comes to engaging with their prospects. And sometimes those prospects that they engage, because they are in a high position, they can at the same time engage the high position individuals in their organizations, and their conversion is much higher, then the results are much higher. And that's somehow what we advocate, right? That research mapping and somehow doing the due diligence is very important, but it must come from the highest possible person within an organization. That's where we understand that the conversion is much higher.
Thank you so much for your sharing, Now is the time for us to open the floor to questions that our attendees have. So if you have any questions for our speakers, this is your best time to list it down. We will check it on the chat box. In the meantime, we are also going to be sharing a web link, or rather a QR code as well, for you to have a direct connection to all of our speakers. Because if there's something that you truly want to find out more, I'm very sure my speakers will be more than happy to connect with you directly. And this thing will be for us to find out more on what aspects of the business that you would need help as well. They will be more than happy to share their expertise too. So maybe we can start off with sharing the link on the chat first. Thank you so much, Lisa. And next off, to make it easier for all of you, we will also be sharing a QR code for you to scan, just in case if you miss the link. There we go. So in the meantime, if there are any questions that you have for our speakers, please feel free to put it in the chat. I'm sure all of them would be more than happy to answer your queries.
By the way, don't be shy to ask your questions. Yeah, we are very friendly people.
All right, we have our very first question from Mankit. So this is attention to Nuno. So talking about the LinkedIn tool, do you think subscribing the Sales Navigator tool will be useful to generate the quality lead?
Yeah, 100%. Even though I don't get any commission from LinkedIn, unfortunately, that's my biggest tip for any sales individual or any leader of an organization. They should be using Sales Navigator. Sales Navigator, again, gives you the biggest database of executives that you can possibly have. You can search for basically anyone in any company. You will have obviously a possibility to actually highlight those individuals that you want to be updated about, and obviously on a regular basis you see a feed of what they are posting or what they are sharing, and even companies, what are the companies doing, how they are coming up in the news, etc., etc. So 100% Sales Navigator is a tool that every salesperson should use, and every leader should have. So yes, I highly recommended it, even though I don't get any piece of it, unfortunately.
Thank you so much for your input. Thank you, Mankit, as well for the question. So we have another few minutes for any more questions. Please feel free to ask our panels. Felicia is right. They are actually really nice people. They are more than happy to answer any queries that you have. So for those of you who feel that you want to find out more rather than just asking a question, not to worry. You can fill in the Google form as well through the QR code or the link that is provided to you. That will also help us in terms that will help the speakers actually to find out a little bit more on what's the best way to approach the query that you have. All right, guys, thank you so much for having the time with us. We really appreciate all of you that have joined us throughout this whole panel discussion. I really hope that you've taken away valuable insights in terms of strategizing, of course, planning your future aspects in terms of growing your sales team, selling virtually, and of course, utilizing the tools that have been shared between Felicia, Charmaine, and Nuno. We will definitely have more to come. And of course, every feedback that is given to us will be even more beneficial for us to make the experience even better for you. So if there's anything else that you would like to share with us, we would like to thank you on behalf of the panel discussion. My name is Lucian. And of course, we have to thank the people behind the scene as well. Lisa, who has been doing everything for us. Nicole, thank you so much for being here with us as well. We hope that we provided something that is valuable to you. So yes, thank you, Roshan. Really, really appreciate it as well. So if there's any feedback, anything that you want to share with us, feel free to connect with all of us personally.
Thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you so much, guys. Really enjoyed
Thank you
this.
so much,
Cheers.
Market.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Thank you, Emil. Really appreciate it as well. Feel free to connect with all of us.
Can I ask a small question?
Yes, Ankit, please go ahead.
Yeah, so we use LinkedIn Sales Navigator, Mail Solution, and other things for sales very intensively. So one place where we really find ourselves guessing is that many times we get a response from the client not interested. Now, what should be the time gap to really reconnect that client who is saying, or potential client who is saying not interested? Because not interested does not mean it is like a client who will never need that. It might be that they might not be requiring it at that point in time.
Well, if I can answer that, it really depends on the type of service that you are providing, but it's good that you keep giving that client relevant information about yourself, right? And maybe keeping them in your database, outreaching to them, or eventually posting more regularly, knowing that he's on your network, and eventually tagging him in one or another post in the comments, just for him to be aware that you are working on something that could be interesting for them in the future. Just keeping him warm, and eventually either then after a while you can reconnect again and say, hey, why don't we have just a casual chat? Why don't we just have a sharing session, something less directed to what they because what happens more often than not is that because you position your messaging, because you position your outreach in a way that it's very clear that you want to sell them something, you ended up not having a conversation with the prospect. And perhaps sometimes, and this happens more often than not, having that conversation is the critical part, because sometimes they don't realize that they need your service. But by talking to them, by providing them the credibility, the credentials that you've been doing, of what you've been doing in your industry and with your services, that might open their minds to eventually, now or later, to reach out to you. So what I suggest is definitely not pushing directly in that narrative, in that message, necessarily your services. Obviously there are different ways to go about it, right? You can obviously be more direct and only filter those guys that really need it at that time, and obviously save time. But at the same time, if it's something that requires more a longer time period to close the deal, you might want to start with obviously having a quick conversation, maybe with the narrative of saying that, hey, let's have a quick chat, understand what each one does in their business, getting to know you because you have very interesting profile in an industry and in a company that I've been following and I appreciate. So if you can spare 30 minutes just having a quick chat, that will be fantastic. Usually people are keen to talk to others when they go with that approach. And then from there, you can expose very openly what you do, how you could potentially help them, not in a salesy way if you know that they might not be open to buy, but as they was shared here, asking the right questions, making sure that you credentialize yourself through the conversation, and then eventually when they are ready to buy and when they need your services indeed, they will be the ones coming to you, and you'll be the first one to have their attention. That's a bit of a long answer, but yeah, that is usually the approach I sometimes suggest.
Yeah, it really helps. Thanks for your input, and I think it really helps. And this is something which we can follow, and we were not doing it currently.
Fantastic.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay, I guess we've come to the end of the session already. So yeah, we are done. We will love to connect with you again. Please, Ankit, if you have any other questions, you want to connect with Nuno, Shamin, or Felicia, feel free to connect with us directly through the Google form. The really nice QR code with the little dinosaur inside.
Sure, thank you. Thanks for providing that support.
You're most welcome.